So Iain Duncan Smith joins us. He's former leader of the Conservative Party. He's been a long-time campaigner against lockdown measures. And I'm sure, so Iain, you were as, I think, shocked and worried as I was when you heard last night from the Prime Minister that despite all of his ministers having said repeatedly there were no plans for vaccine passports and that they would be, indeed Nadhim Zahawi said they would be discriminatory, that we are now going to have vaccine passports for nightclubs and possibly even for pubs and other indoor venues from the start of September.
Yes, I was a little confused about this. I suspect I'm not alone in that. I now no longer refer to this as Freedom Day, but as what I call Freelock Day, which is a kind of we go free and then we lock ourselves back in. A little bit like the prisoners sitting in the cell. They open the door and say, "You can leave, but if you leave, you're going to be in a heap of trouble," and so you're not quite sure whether they go out the door or not. I think there are some problems here with this. First of all. If it's so desperate, why are they waiting till September? The second thing is, if the passports, therefore, are a way of getting to nightclubs, and we think, therefore, that being double vaccinated means that you are protected, why are we still using the NHS Test, Track and Trace app to ping everybody and tell them to lock down if they've had 2 vaccines? If they've had 2 vaccines, then surely the continuum here would be, okay, maybe if you have to prove that you are okay in a crowded atmosphere, I can live with that, possibly, providing we're also able not to have to lock down if we've had 2 vaccines. So there needs to be a logic to this which flows through. And at the moment, my concern is some of this stuff does appear to be erratic, being made up on the basis of the last forecast that a scientist
that's the thing. And it seems to me also that these things are not being thought through. And so, okay, well, if we open up this aspect of the economy and the society, then the trade-off will have to be that closing down. This seems to be just, what has the focus group said today? Who's angry? Where is the bone of contention? People being cross at seeing young people enjoying themselves. I mean, it seems to me there are 2 groups of people in society right now, and I may be in the minority on this, but when I see the images of young people at nightclubs, as of many of them midnight, just at the beginning of Monday, not even waiting until Monday night, I just smiled with joy at seeing people and thinking, right, I can't wait to join them this weekend. And then millions of other people look at it and go, oh, it's so outrageous and irresponsible. It does seem to me to be quite bizarre that the government is making up these sort of policies on the hoof without looking at any of the long-term implications, because you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to be concerned about the idea of becoming a papers, please society. Boris Johnson himself has said previously, when he was a Telegraph columnist, if anyone ever asked him for his ID papers, he'd rather eat them than show them. He doesn't want that sort of society. And no doubt Dominic Cummings will come out with more revelations that he was completely opposed to this. But then he will do it anyway. Is he just in a sort of a permanent negotiation with his chief medical officer and chief scientific advisor, hostage takers, where, okay, so if you'll let me unlock on this, what do I have to do to keep you happy and get you standing next to me at a press conference? Is that what's going on behind the scenes, do you think?
Well, I wish it was. I don't even think that's going on. I think what's happening is they make a decision and then a bunch of aggrieved scientists come out and pound the living daylights out of the media with every single forecast they can possibly imagine, which doom and gloom and potential this and potential that. And then they do some polling, and polling tells them that the public, by and large, agrees with lockdown. Well, why not? They're being paid the furlough scheme at the moment, so they're not having to worry about finance, the economy, their jobs, or anything else. Many of them.
Yes, no one's had to pay the extra taxes to pay for this yet, and they haven't got to grips with the 12 million people on the NHS waiting list, many of whom will. I mean, I'm sorry, but many of whom will die as a result of not getting treated in time.
Well, that's exactly my point. And there was a question asked of Nadhim Zahawi yesterday, I think, on the Today programme, and he was asked, "Well, how many deaths are you prepared to put up with before you decide to end the coming out of lockdown?" And he stumbled over the answer. The answer is very simple to that question. No. How many deaths are you prepared to put up with on flu, on pneumonia, on cancer? How many deaths do you want to? And are you going to publish them every single day like you do for COVID?
Yeah.
And then tell us everything is getting higher, when in actual fact we know the link is pretty much broken.
But a lot of this is a problem. I really do think, not just with government and with abject lack of opposition, other than from the backbenchers and the Conservative Party like yourself, but also from the media. The assumptions in all of the questions from the media in these press conferences, the assumptions in all of the tweets that are sent by the mainstream media, and I know I'm part of the mainstream media, but we seem to be at Talk Radio very much a minority in questioning this, is the assumption is, well, if case rates rise, we will inevitably, the Prime Minister will be forced to lock down. The assumption is that this is just the normal result of cases rising, even when you don't see mass deaths. And we know that COVID deaths right now are 20 times lower than they were at the peak in January in the wave then. And even with that, even with the knowledge that we knew that the vaccines would not save every life, and we knew that they would just simply cut the deaths, and we knew that the whole point of that lockdown was to roll out the vaccine so more people were protected, it doesn't seem to matter how good any of the good news is. The media and the politicians will cling on to that bad news. And that assumption that a policy that was imported from a totalitarian police state in China has now become the norm. And I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't expect us to be in lockdown again this autumn.
Well, everybody assumes it. And the problem is that the public's got a condition to the idea that lockdown can be a state of being, because, as I say earlier on, the threat to the other bits of their lives is taken away. And that is really, the choice being made is not a balanced choice any longer. The choice is being made between locking down and being okay, and not locking down and dying.
Yeah.
But that's not the choice. The choice is, how do we get on with our lives, get our economy moving, give ourselves and our children the opportunities which we were so quick to take 20, 30, 40 years ago, and which they will not have. How do we get the balance of what happens with disease and infection? How do we understand that all viruses are with us for a long time? You will see peaks, you will see troughs. The question really is, are people massively likely to die or not die? And the truth is, we have a vaccine. We have a double vaccine. We have been incredibly successful. But what I'm worried about right now is we're going to throw away one of the great global success stories, which is the UK's. First of all, it's getting hold of vaccines and designing them. And secondly, it's having them rolled out.
Yeah.
We are, 90% one jab. We are 70% pretty much, getting towards 70% two jabs. Very soon we will be up pretty much into the margin of error territory. Yes, there may be some people who don't decide to take it, but I don't know, how do you hold them down and arrest them and jab them? Well, short of that, I don't know what this is all about. What I'm after is a balance of risks.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. But again, we know what the answer is to this: people not getting jabbed, and apparently they're concerned about 3 million under 30s who haven't had their first jab yet. But we know these things take time. People have to get around to booking them. Everyone I know under 30 in this office, they've been desperate to get their first jab and desperately trying to move forward their second jab, partly so they can go on holiday. But again, that's a decision of other countries to have vaccine passports. I mean, the concern here, of course, is the slippery slope of vaccine passports in this country, because, if you have to provide papers for this disease, well, why not for flu? Why not other things? What other things are we going to be allowed to do or to not do, depending on our health status or any other status? Now, people think that might be a conspiracy theory, but of course, it's not from a Hollywood movie. It's actually happening in China right now. People have to produce their phones with their ID on at numerous places. Every penny they spend, everywhere they go is logged, who they speak to, what they're doing, and people have social credit. There is a real concern from people who are not remotely, Bill Gates is behind everything, conspiracy theorists, but who are genuinely concerned that we are throwing away the fundamental foundations of living in a free and liberal democracy, and it's taken just 16 months to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at China for the moment, China actually uses technology now to increase the control that they have right down to street level. It's quite staggering. You cannot go anywhere in China, and I mean you cannot go anywhere in China, buy anything, see anybody, travel on anything, without that the Chinese government knows exactly where you are, what you did, how much you spent, and who you saw. Now, that is an absolute reality for people in China. They have no freedom, they have no democracy, they have no human rights. Now, I know the vast majority of the public will put up quite happily with lockdown and stuff like that, because they'll say, well, of course, the threat from COVID. That's because everyone has pounded them with the idea of the balance, which has gone missing. Yeah. The problem right now is freedom. You really don't understand what the value of it is until the day that they start knocking on your door and telling you that you are in trouble because you disobeyed rules from the government in areas that you once thought were matters of choice.
Yeah.
And that is the problem that we face. And that is why it's not an esoteric issue. I am concerned. Yes, we can put up with these things occasionally when there is an outbreak. I understand in the extremists, you may have to do that for a period. But now we have the alternative, which is a world filled with vaccines that work. And therefore, we must take the early opportunity to get those working vaccines as a change in the way that we now live our lives. And instead of locking down, just try and get as many people vaccinated as possible. I understand that. But let's, for goodness sake, start getting people out to start taking those risks that they would take normally, crossing the road, riding a motorcycle, driving a car. I mean, what about all those people who are dying of pneumonia right now? Are we saying to people, because bacterial pneumonia is a killer, we know that, are we saying to people, I'm afraid, the deaths are just marginally too high. We're going to have to start, stopping people from meeting other people who are at risk.
Yeah.
This is the real problem we face. We get into a new normal.
It's and a very slippery slope. Just finally, you're saying about getting people back out and about, Freedom Day, as you say, here's your freedom, but if you use it, it'll be taken away again. The pingdemic isn't helping. Huge numbers of people, hundreds of thousands, predicted to be millions of people, prevented from going to work, children prevented from going to school, haven't got COVID. You can be double jabbed, have a negative COVID test. You can take a lateral flow every day, but unless now you're a critical worker, NHS worker, or in supply chains and the like, you unfortunately are made to isolate for 10 days. That date, August the 16th, that's going to change. The Prime Minister made it clear that's not going to be moved forward. Do you think that's a mistake?
Well, I don't understand the logic of that. I listened to it yesterday, to Nadeem Zahawi. I like very much, by the way, but Nadeem said, August the 16th, if you've had 2 jabs, you'll be fine. And my answer is, well, what changes between now and August the 16th? I've had 2 jabs. Yeah. So if I get told I've got to self-isolate because a track and trace app pinged me, now I'd have to self-isolate. Well, what was to be different in August the 16th? I still had the 2 jabs now, and I would have had them then. Why can't I? If you're going to allow NHS workers, I think legitimately, if they've had those 2 jabs, to ignore that and just get tested, then why can't the rest of us just ignore it and get tested? What's the difference between now and August the 16th? There's some magic thing that is going to take place on August the 12th that allows us all to be okay on 2 jabs. Yeah. We're okay now on 2 jabs.
It's quite bizarre. So Iain Duncan Smith, former leader of the Conservative Party, thank you so much.